Tonight, running for their lives, a powerful earthquake in China kills thousands, including hundreds of children buried in the rubble of their school. And the first plane load of U.S. aid arrives in Myanmar, but will it get to the victims? I'm Katie Couric. Also tonight, deadly weather here at home.
Oh my God. Oh my.
Tornadoes sweep across the South and Midwest, leaving more than 20 people dead. A CBS News exclusive. A prominent doctor says don't rule out a possible link between childhood vaccines and autism. And we begin a cross-country road trip to show you how Americans are dealing with the soaring price of gasoline.
This is the CBS Evening News with Katie Couric.
Good evening, everyone. Tonight, a host of deadly natural disasters around the world: an earthquake in China, that cyclone in Myanmar, and here at home, tornadoes. First, China, hit today by a magnitude 7.9 quake, centered in Sichuan province and felt thousands of miles away. The numbers are astounding. More than 10,000 people have been killed. In one area near the epicenter, 80% of the buildings were destroyed. In another, a chemical plant collapsed, spilling 80 tons of toxic liquid ammonia. Celia Hatton with the latest tonight from Beijing.
China was shaken to its core Monday. These images, recorded by a college student, capture the earthquake as it hit. The impact and the more than 300 aftershocks that followed were the worst the country's felt in more than 30 years. Dozens of bodies were pulled from the wreckage of a 3-story high school. The building collapsed in the tremors, crushing 900 teenagers. Construction cranes were set up on the site, but desperate onlookers used their hands to move the rubble as those still trapped cried out for help. Most people were simply stunned by what they'd felt and overcome by the overwhelming tragedy unfolding in front of them.
Phone communication is bad, and there's still a lot of friends of mine, Chinese friends, who are uncertain as to whether their family members are okay and friends are okay. So there's definitely a sense of unease still.
When word spread the quake was centered in Sichuan, some fought to fly there, despite canceled flights to Sichuan's capital. I just want to go home to my family, says this man. I can't get through on the phone. Chinese leaders vowed to launch an all-out effort to provide relief from the quake, dispatching rescue crews immediately. But cracked roads and the threat of landslides have made it treacherous for relief teams to find out how bad the damage really is.
Well, the death toll is expected to rise now that daylight has broken in China on Tuesday, giving rescuers a chance to make contact with people living in some of the region's most remote areas. Katie?
Meanwhile, Celia, does the Chinese government have enough rescue workers and relief workers to deal with the situation?
Well, they've already dispatched 20,000 aid workers to the region. Some have traveled by foot even to get there as quickly as possible. So at the moment, the Chinese government hasn't made any appeal for people, although the Red Cross has made appeals for donations for the region.
We've also heard reports that there's a chemical plant leak in the area. Do you know anything about that?
We are getting very sketchy reports about this chemical plant leak through China's state-run media. We've heard that the plant did rupture. It buried hundreds of people. 60,000 people have been evacuated from the area because toxic ammonia is spewing into the air in that region.
Celia Hatton reporting from Beijing, China tonight. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Here at home, a violent storm system moved into the northeast today. Strong winds and heavy rain took down trees and caused flooding, especially along the coast. Over the weekend, the same storm system battered parts of the plains and the southeast, kicking off tornadoes that killed at least 24 people. And some towns may never recover. Kelly Cobiella reports tonight from Pitcher, Oklahoma.
In the broken neighborhoods of this old mining town, a bit of life returned today.
Poor little dolly.
People like Sally Lane came back for the first time since Saturday's tornado to find decades of memories in a pile on their lawn. Sally was here, huddled in the bathtub when it hit.
I thought, oh no, here it comes. About that time, my bathroom window blowed out and glass went all over the floor. And I prayed, oh God, please help me.
As many as 8 tornadoes rolled through the small towns where Oklahoma, Kansas, and Missouri meet around 5:30 Saturday night, part of a violent storm system that may have spawned as many as 52 tornadoes in all. This wedding party was set for 6 o'clock Saturday night. No one showed.
Everybody was running late. And when I called Mom, she said that everything was good, and that was like 3 minutes before the tornado hit.
This is her home now. The entire family survived. Even before the tornado, there wasn't much of a future here. The government is slowly buying out the town and moving its people because of these lead-tainted piles of debris, a product of the old mining days. John Sparkman has lived in Pitcher his whole life.
It was pretty much inevitable that this town was going away.
Yeah, and you want to say goodbye in your own way.
At 71, Sally Lane can fit all of her belongings in the seat of an old chair. She never wanted to leave.
I am not moving out of this house. So I guess God had different ideas.
The tornado that destroyed this home was an EF4. That's the second strongest, according to the National Weather Service. And Katie, the trail of destruction from it lasts 74 miles through Oklahoma and Missouri.
Kelly Kobayea in Pitcher, Oklahoma, with that amazing backdrop. Kelly, thank you. With 52 storms this weekend, a total of more than 900 tornadoes have been reported since January 1st. That is up 27% from a year ago. Dave Price of The Early Show is with some tornado experts tonight in Norman, Oklahoma. And Dave, has this left the experts scratching their heads?
Well, they have, Katie. In fact, that's the nature of what these researchers do. They scratch their heads and then they look for answers. And it's clear that tornadoes are among the most violent storms that we encounter in this country. And here at the NOAA National Severe Storms Lab, it's been a busy year as scientists are trying to figure out why these twisters form and how they behave. Understanding exactly how twisters form has intrigued researchers for decades. Scientists believe tornadoes occur when cool, dense, dry air speeds at a high altitude and moves in, sinking and riding under warm, moist air. This creates a spinning effect that stretches into a tornado.
And if they are just right, it can have catastrophic results. It can have catastrophic results. It may not, because there's still some things that have to happen.
Making predicting a tornado or the path it will take all the more difficult. Though scientists now have better tools like Doppler radar to help warn people when conditions seem right for a tornado, forecasting twisters is still a tricky science.
Well, we haven't unlocked many of the mysteries of tornadoes, and it'll probably be a long time before we unlock them.
25 years from now, how advanced do you imagine our study of tornadoes is going to be?
Well, what we're hopefully going to be able to do in 25 years is we'll be able to predict the intensity of tornadoes. If it's an intense tornado, you have to make sure you're in a really strong, probably specially designed shelter. If it's a very weak tornado, you can survive that without injury in an ordinary built house.
Everyone tries to categorize tornadoes on the map and on the calendar, but they can happen anywhere at any time. And one particularly deadly season like this, Katie, doesn't necessarily signify a long-term change in the weather patterns. Back to you.
Which I guess is some good news. Dave Price. Dave, thanks so much. Now turning to that crisis in Myanmar, 2 million people there are in desperate need of food, medicine, and shelter. But the military government refuses to let foreign experts in to help. Today, President Bush told CBS Radio News the world ought to be angry about that. Meanwhile, off the coast, U.S. Navy ships are ready to help if they get the green light. And today, a lone U.S. relief flight was allowed to land. Alan Pizzi reports from neighboring Thailand.
The 14 tons of water, blankets, and mosquito nets the American C-130 carried are a drop in the ocean of misery for the victims, but the shipment is a significant concession by a regime Washington has labeled an outpost of tyranny. The Myanmar government has been accused of turning a natural disaster into a humanitarian catastrophe by blocking foreign aid workers. But today, Myanmar State TV showed officials welcoming the highest-ranking U.S. military officer to have met with members of the junta. Admiral Timothy Keating said the Myanmar government was ready to consider what the American military is calling Operation Caring Relief. Aid workers say ignoring politics is a necessary part of their work.
You take it as you find it. You do what you can do for the sake of humans who, in their hour of need, deserve our support.
The misery evident in these exclusive pictures says it all. Bodies float in the floodwaters, unnamed, and unburied. The living have other concerns. The Irrawaddy Delta was Myanmar's rice bowl and used to feed much of Southeast Asia. The cyclone struck in the middle of the harvest season that brings in 20% of the annual crop. But even the personal food stocks of local farmers have been damaged by the floodwaters. Clean water and wood for cooking fires are scarce to non-existent. Any village that is even partially intact becomes a refugee camp, a place for those with nothing left to huddle together and wait for their rulers and their would-be saviors to come to terms. Alan Pizzi, CBS News, Bangkok.
And there is much more CBS News ahead. Up next, is there a link between childhood vaccines and autism? A leading doctor breaks with her colleagues in an exclusive CBS interview. Every 20 minutes in this country, another child is diagnosed with autism. And in Washington today, parents went to court to try to prove that some of those cases are linked to childhood vaccines. Tonight, in a CBS News exclusive, one prominent doctor weighs in. Here's Cheryl Atkinson.
Jordan King was a typical baby, vocal and vivacious. Then just before age 2, after a large battery of vaccinations, he withdrew from the world.
The real scary thing was when I noticed he wasn't looking at us anymore in the eyes.
William Meade was a Pottery Barn baby model who met all the typical milestones. Then at age 2, after a set of vaccinations, he too changed forever. Tests in both children revealed dangerous levels of mercury, which can cause permanent brain damage. Their only known exposure, thimerosal, a mercury preservative once widely used in childhood shots. Now William and Jordan, age 10, are test cases among 5,000 autism claims in a special federal court set up to compensate vaccine injuries. The claims argue that mercury in vaccines, or the vaccines themselves, cause their children's autism. Government officials and many scientists insist there's no way vaccines can lead to autism.
I think it's important for the average parent to know that the government hasn't made a link between vaccines and autism.
But now a powerful medical voice is breaking ranks with her colleagues.
I think that the public health officials have been too quick to dismiss the hypothesis as irrational.
Dr. Bernadine Healy is the former head of the National Institutes of Health. In an exclusive interview, she says a link between vaccines and autism has not been ruled out.
But public health officials have been saying they know there's enough evidence and it's not causal.
You can't say that.
Dr. Healy accuses public health officials of deliberately avoiding research into whether some children may be more susceptible to vaccine side effects, afraid the answer will scare the public. And she's disturbed government researchers haven't bothered to study the cases in vaccine court. CBS News has learned the government has paid more than 1,300 claims of brain injuries caused by vaccines, but a government health official admits they've never even looked to see how many resulted in autism, telling CBS News they do not track cases on this basis.
What we're seeing in the bulk of the population is vaccines are safe. Vaccines are safe, but there may be the susceptible group. The fact that there is concern that you don't want to know that susceptible group is a real disappointment to me. If you know that susceptible group, you can save those children.
Government officials would not respond directly to Dr. Healy's views. She, like the parents of Jordan and William, support vaccines, but believe the government should be working harder to make them safer. Cheryl Atkinson, CBS News, Washington.
Coming up next, Hillary Clinton hanging tough, but changing her tone. Now to politics. In the battle for the Democratic nomination, Barack Obama picked up 4 more superdelegates today to add to his growing lead. But Jim Axelrod reports Hillary Clinton is making it a fight to the finish, campaigning hard for tomorrow's West Virginia primary.
It's in every greeting to every supporter.
Well, we're going to keep going. We need a good vote tomorrow now.
Hillary Clinton isn't even hinting at dropping out anytime soon.
Now it's on to West Virginia and Kentucky and Oregon.
She's already running ads in the next 2 states to hold primaries.
Oregon knows that with bold ideas, there's no challenge we can't meet.
But on the stump, her tone has shifted, sticking to bland and safe parts of her stump speech.
So I'm here today because
I know what's really going to matter tomorrow.
And going nowhere near attacks on Barack Obama. Certainly nothing divisive. Nothing about she being more attractive to white voters than he is.
I think if she ends this race on a positive note, it's much more likely to be remembered as a positive chapter.
Obama knows the polls point to a huge win for Clinton here tomorrow.
I understand that many more here in West Virginia will probably support Senator Clinton. This is true.
But he isn't bothered because it won't change his status as likely Democratic nominee. So he's now focusing on issues likely to be raised in the general election, like questions about his patriotism.
My grandfather, Stanley Dunham, enlisted after Pearl Harbor and went on to march in Patton's army.
While Clinton plans to be here in West Virginia tomorrow night to claim victory, Obama will actually be in Missouri, sure to be a general election battleground. He's trying to signal that he's moving on. Katie.
All right, Jim Axelrod. Jim, thanks very much. Still ahead, hitching a ride to beat soaring gas prices. A special cross-country road trip next. Gasoline prices continue to rise. They hit another record high today, $3.72 a gallon. And look at this. In just 6 years, the price has now tripled. This year alone, gas is rising 7 times as fast as the overall inflation rate. With soaring gas prices affecting the entire country, we're beginning a new series, Eye on the Road. 2 correspondents, one in a hybrid Toyota Prius, the other in a Ford Fusion, set out today to cross the country in opposite directions, and they'll meet in Missouri. We have 2 reports tonight, beginning with Nancy Cordes in Pittsburgh. And Nancy, gas keeps rising, but it's still very tough to get drivers to change their habits.
It really is, Katie. People love their cars, and we talked to so many of them today who are not willing to give those cars up. We left in New York in a blinding rainstorm. Now it's a beautiful night here in Pittsburgh, which recently rated the 5th best city in the country for commuters. But even here, they tell us the soaring gas prices have crossed kind of a threshold recently, from nuisance to nightmare.
We are a nation of drivers. Only 5% of the country's commuters take public transportation. Everyone else is stubbornly sticking to their cars. In fact, since 1990, the number of so-called super commuters, folks who drive 90 minutes or more to get to work, has risen by 95%. One of them is Brian McCausland. I'm Daddy. A father of 4. Okay, I'm up. We met in Pennsylvania farm country. Bye. I joined him on his ride to work, 50 miles away.
Of course, like the rest of the country, we had no idea that, the price of gas was going to essentially double.
Now he's spending $300 a month to go back and forth.
How have the gas prices affected your family's finances?
Well, I had to go back to work.
The cost of commuting is also killing Harris Rosenberg. He's up before dawn every morning for the 2-hour drive to his job, delivering, ironically, gasoline.
My wife and I were planning on taking our grandchildren to a Met game and a Yankee game this season. It's just all going to food and gas right now.
Both are at a crossroads. They moved out here to save money, but now?
I could probably get another job that pays about the same closer to home. In this type of economy, starting fresh, that's a little tough,
This is Jeff Glore in San Francisco. Our trip started with something they call slugging, an unusual form of commuting where total strangers actually hitch a ride to their 9-to-5 jobs. We picked up Jason Mendry.
Even people around here that I've told that I do this think I'm crazy, because it does sound a little bit funny to say I pretty much do organized hitchhiking.
Cars carrying 3 people get to use the HOV lane and don't pay a toll.
Take care.
Up next, 120 miles east, the Sly Park Campground in Pollock Pines, where we found Mike Morrissey, owner of a 38-foot RV for 10 years.
She's been all over the place, though, right?
Yeah. Since it only gets 7 miles a gallon, this year Morrissey's vacationing only 3 miles away from home. Reservations here, mostly locals, are up 140% this year. People who don't even want to think about how much a longer trip would cost.
It's cost so much, it's one of those things where if you keep track of it too much, then you get upset.
Here's another way to get your mind off the road. Go in the water. Whitewater rafting on the American River off Route 49. But even though the rafts are fuel-free, the drive here is not. A 15% bus surcharge that owner Don Comes has to soak up.
It really cuts into the profit to make it really, really tight.
We are now on Lake Tahoe, and here are the official tallies from day one, Katie. We're paying an average of $4.13 a gallon, getting 39.4 miles a gallon in our hybrid. Nancy on the East Coast paying an average of $3.72 a gallon, getting 24.7 miles a gallon. We still have 275 miles to go tonight. And Katie, I got to be honest, the crew just wants to stay here. It is gorgeous with the beach and mountains in the background.
I don't blame them. You're the lucky one. Jeff, Clora, thank you. And Nancy, we're going to pick up with you tomorrow. Where are you headed?
We're headed to Indianapolis, Katie, by way of a small town in Indiana that goes by the nickname Biotown. They're trying to get completely off of the grid using something they like to call pig power. We'll explain tomorrow night.
All right, Nancy and Jeff, thank you both so much. And that is the CBS Evening News for tonight. I'm Katie Couric in New York. Thank you for watching. I'll see you tomorrow. Good night.